I'm Sean Slade. I'm Australian, but also American. And I head BTS Spark, which is the social impact arm of BTS. And we help support both the education sectors and the non-profit sectors. I'm based just outside Washington, D.C., and I've been in the US for about 20 years. Um, Josh Valeri is my compatriot over in Western Australia. And as he was mentioning, it's about 11 p.m. there, hence the darkness in his background. You can put a light on, Josh, if that helps, by the way. I'm sure you do have electricity in Perth. But
I'll come down.
Josh is our sort of expert residence around all things AI, though he will be probably diminishing his own expertise. We think he's our expert, and he tends to know a lot about the introduction of AI around our work in leadership and also the development of bots. So I'm here to welcome you, and he's here to let you know all of the ins and outs. So I'm going to hand it over to you, Josh.
Thanks so much, Sean, and welcome everybody, and welcome to everyone who's watching on the recording as well. We know a lot of people watch the recordings afterwards, so I'm going to try my best to keep everyone who's watching later in mind, while also trying to keep it engaging for everyone who's turned up today. So thanks for coming along. So we're looking at AI in practice, designing bots for real learning. Last month we did a webinar kind of just introducing the fact that we are delving into AI-enabled learning initiatives, and today we're going to be looking at how some of that works in practice. I'll tell you a little bit about BTS Spark. We'll have a quick discussion about how you're using AI, then jump into an example of one of our courses, Speak Like a Leader, and then we're going to jump into some of the bots that we are creating for professional learning. And actually, I'm going to actually demo a bot. So you're going to see me struggling to have a difficult conversation with a difficult bot, or not so difficult bot, but in real time. So it's going to be interesting, and then we can reflect on that together. This is a little bit about BTS Spark. Really, we're about helping school leaders and not-for-profit leaders as well, and more broadly, educational leaders. We're a not-for-profit practice, part of BTS, which is a global education consultancy. We've hitherto done a lot of coaching and workshops, but we're now delving into AI-enabled learning as well. We've partnered with education organizations worldwide. BTS wins lots of awards. We've also won our own award as BTS Spark quite recently, the best school leader coaching and leadership development consultancy for 2025, and we're really proud of that. And we support schools and systems with 4 big issues: coaching and mentoring skills, leadership development, well-being support, and system change. And a through line we're seeing through all of this, it would be no surprise, is that AI is creeping into all of it. So a question, rather than going into breakout rooms, seeing the size of our group, I just want to ask, how are you and your team using AI in your day-to-day work? I'd love to hear any examples. I'm going to hone this question a little bit in just a moment, but any examples that you've got, either put them in the chat or just come off mute. We'd love to hear from you. Might even stop my share just so I can see you all.
I'll mention a couple of things. So we're doing, apart from sort of the teaching and learning side that we've invested a lot of time and money into, we sort of, one of the ways we're using it, for example, in admissions, is we've created sort of 4 sort of AI personas that we've using to sort of go through all of our website and our admission stuff to identify areas for improvement in what somebody from that sort of background might look for. as they come into our school and they try and sort of identify where they're going. We're also using AI in really analyzing feedback from our teachers. So we do a leadership feedback survey with each of our leaders, and using that, especially for the large ones, feedback from our community in terms of really identifying and percolating out the sort of main trends that come out of that feedback, for example. And so
That's really interesting.
saving us a hell of a lot of time rather than spending hours and hours and hours and hours trying to stroll through 300 or 400 pieces of feedback, using AI to sort of percolate that for us.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. I've actually not heard that before, but yeah, like being able to gather all that feedback from your community and then distill it really quickly. That's fantastic. Alyssa's joined us and she's just going to be horrified that there's going to be a video of her a little later. Sorry about that in advance, Alyssa. Anyone else got some examples they'd like to share? Or even, I'd love to hear if you're not using AI at all, which I think at the end of 2025 would be as surprising as people using AI at the start of 2023.
I'll share an example. I was working with Joe Fambro, who I saw him just pop in on this call for a minute. We were working on a digital learning strategic plan. There he is. And we approached it in a way that was sort of a first for both of us. We recorded a series of conversations describing the state of all of the different aspects of digital learning across the school, and then had the audio recording transcribed and then ran that through AI in order to try to consolidate our thoughts and pick out the main ideas and use that as a leverage point to get started with the actual plan writing. It worked a bit, I would say. There was a bunch of things where I felt like we still needed to go back and clarify, where we were coming at it from. But one of the things that it did was that it got the ball rolling, and it sort of took away that empty paper. And sometimes it's a lot easier to see something and then know why it's not quite right and put it down in the way that is right, rather than just starting with a blank slate.
Yeah, that sounds great. And Joe is back on the call as well. So it's great to hear that you're both using that. And I totally agree that sometimes you just need to get that ball rolling, don't you? Even if it's totally wrong, you can say, okay, that's wrong because, and then start correcting. Ala, you've got your hand up.
Hey, hi. So I've been trying to get my students to use AI, contrary to what a lot of people at different schools are trying not to do. They're trying to ban AI at schools where I'm at.
Yeah.
But so I've been trying to get them to use it as a learning process now. Students tend to find the urge to just ask the bots the questions, and then the bot gives them the answer, and that's their fast, easy way to get through their assignments. I did try to meddle with creating a bot that has some limitations where it's actually not giving the answer, but it's helping the students reach that answer. And that has been my experience so far. I haven't quite reached that point yet where the student or I can't try to circumvent the limitations I'm trying to give the bot. But that's where we're at right now. Some of my teachers also use AI to, so if they have, especially in English, they have a lot of writing assignments to correct. So they just chuck the assignments in with their rubrics, and they ask the AI to do the corrections with the feedback. So they've found ways to try and utilize it for efficiency.
Yeah. I mean, the efficiency bit is such a massive theme, but it's really interesting to hear that you're trying to get a pedagogical approach where you're not just given the answers straight away, which is fascinating. And I imagine it probably sometimes works and sometimes
No,
completely goes off the rails.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're still dabbling. Any other examples that someone really wants to share before I ask the next question?
And we're also using it. Oh, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Let's hear from you both. Go on, Lamont.
We're also using it for survey analysis. Personally, I find it really helpful for policy review and policy writing. Someone's made a bot out of my writing and also a series of meetings over about like 4 months, and then sort of given it back to me as a way to, I don't know, like, I suppose, hear myself or see myself. That was an interesting experiment. And we as a school at the moment are in 2 big fat kind of fortnightly sprints, and we're being sort of guided by a company called Ablana, and that's working with our GDPR person and our edtechs to get EU AI Act compliant and also use their framework. So at the moment, we're working on creating a model where students and teachers label the extent to which they've used it and how they've used it in terms of kind of like, I suppose, it's modeling integrity, but it's also talking about the extent to which you've kind of partnered with it, I suppose. So that's the work we're doing at the moment.
That's really interesting. I love how we're getting all these different examples coming through. Pascal?
Yes, on my side, I'm the associate director for library services. So I'm using AI with the students for all the research elements of their work, and my too, actually. And so how AI can help them at different stage of their research process, finding the sources and getting out of the AI in order to evaluate them, and then come back to help them to, read the content, extract some ideas, and getting out of the AI. So trying to model this kind of interaction between the human interaction and the AI bot interaction, and how it can help them to engage in the research, when right now we see how the kids have difficulty to engage with harder texts, with scholarly journals, and that how it helped them to get access to those quality resources without overwhelming them.
Amazing. So we're hearing help with research, help with strategy, pedagogical approaches, a little bit of professional learning in there, and a kind of emergent way of identifying how we're working. So many different examples. I think, Lamore, you touched on this, but I'm going to ask the question quite specifically to the group now. How are you and your team using AI for professional learning? And I'd also love to hear if you're not using it for professional learning. Yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? Because I feel like not many people have gotten quite to that point yet. Like, efficiency is a massive one. A little bit of pedagogy too, a little bit of ideation, but AI in the professional learning space, I'm sure some people are doing it, but it doesn't seem to be. And I'm finding this too in my discussions with school leaders and system leaders, is there's not a lot of AI for professional learning per se being used. I'd love to be challenged on that, but because I'm learning this too, I'd just love to hear. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, I mean, I think the AI, I suppose, to some degree, AI is taking up a lot of our professional learning time, because we're trying to equip our teachers to use AI effectively in our school. And so it takes up a lot of time, but that's not what you're talking about. And so, we're doing we're doing a lot of work with our teachers in sort of working to upskill them. And, you know, we're looking for partners like Eblana and like Unconstrained and whatever, in terms of helping teachers to sort of upskill themselves. But that's very sort of AI skills based rather than
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about.
Yeah, learning how to use AI rather than using AI to learn something else. Yeah, I saw Paul, Juan, and Pascal's microphones go off. So maybe Pascal, can we go over to you?
Actually, I just started to touch this idea of using AI to develop or learn something. I'm in charge of entrepreneurship program at our school, and I wanted to help a student to develop an app that, and so I have no coding, I have no the basis, and so then based on the elements of the app, I was able to learn that. Then I stopped because it's not my project. I was just helping the kid to see without having to invest and hire somebody to develop the app. We said, hey, okay, let's try to use AI to learn about that. And at the end of this experience, I said, oh, maybe I can continue, but I stopped here. So I don't know how far I would have been able to do that.
Yeah, massive leap from where you could have been 2 years ago, though, isn't it? Juan?
No, provocative question, and clearly, like a lot of people wanted to respond. So you hit on something. I would say, I mean, for me, we don't use it yet. We are using it more, but it does raise this like balance or tension that we find with professional learning, which is like, how do you ensure consistency or alignment in the professional learning, especially as you get to more and more scale, but then differentiate for where each adult or professional is in their journey and make sure that they're getting the specific support that they need. So
yeah, for sure. And Paul?
So if two examples came to mind,
Yeah.
one of them was in my own professional learning. I had been doing a lot of digging into data warehousing, data architecture, data modeling, and I wouldn't be able to do most of what I'm doing right now if I hadn't been able to learn and go through some of my mistakes using AI. And then another example that I've seen, and I've done a little bit more with my last school than here, but there's one of the first sort of specialized chatbots that I've seen was one focusing on Universal Design for Learning, UDL, and was sort of designed to help coach teachers on how to make their lessons and units more UDL friendly.
I love that. That's awesome. So that's a great example of some of the stuff we're going to show you. It's in that universe. It's not doing the same thing. BTS is a leadership development company, so we're looking at developing leadership skills. But yeah, it's using AI to learn the other thing rather than, as Bradley was saying, using AI to learn how to use AI, which is totally important, but you know, it is taking up a lot of our professional learning time. So someone asked me the other day, and I'm not just saying this, they literally asked me this question. So you do a lot of coaching at BTS and BTS Spark. So you're just going to replace all your coaches with, so I'm going to make sure I share my sound this time. Hang on, share. So I was sharing my sound. So you're just going to replace all your coaches with AI. And of course, I said absolutely not. Or maybe it's not, of course, but you know, the answer was absolutely not. I can see why some people might think that, but it's just anathema to what we do. However, so you know, we really value our professional leadership coaches. They're all qualified, certified. They've got hours of training. They do supervision every year. They're just top tier coaches. And from those coaching conversations, we've gathered a lot of data. We've published books. We've synthesized that data into frameworks that we can use in professional development. They underpin the modules that we use as a basis for our one-on-one coaching, our group coaching, our facilitated workshops, and even our online learning. But what we're now moving into as well as not in place of all of that really good professional learning modality, learning journeys that include AI-enabled learning. And so I've got some views that I'm going to share before we start getting practical. This is what I've kind of come to after a year of being part of some of the design and then being able to use some of these technologies. So I think AI definitely expands access. So these tools can be quite affordable, and they give people opportunity to practice and get feedback. It enhances, but does not replace a lot of professional learning, especially professional learning that relies on coaching and facilitation, human facilitation. AI does need human framing. I'm sure a lot of you who've spent a lot of time on ChatGPT, you sense the unhumanness of the tool really quickly. So I think it definitely needs that human framing. But also conversely, I think coaches and facilitators need AI literacy. So if you're doing professional learning in a space where AI is increasingly becoming prevalent, you need to start learning how people are using AI and more importantly, how you can leverage AI to enhance the professional learning that you're overseeing. And I guess in direct response to the question, are you just going to replace all of your coaches with AI? No, I think human connection remains the differentiator. There's going to be a lot of online learning that relies solely on AI, but I think human connection is still the underpinning for driving lasting change. And we're going to unpack that as we go through. I think we might skip hearing from our CEO, but I do recommend if you look up this video here, and we're going to send you the slide deck so you'll be able to watch this later. Jessica Scone, who's our CEO, she talks about something called In Real Life Plus, where at BTS and BTS Spark, we're starting to blend our human-led, it's funny that I'm actually saying those words, human-led professional learning with AI. We're putting it all together.
But I don't buy it. I don't buy that.
Sorry, we'll skip that one. So we're about to look at an example. So Speak Like a Leader is a self-paced learning journey with an embedded AI coach in it. So you're about to find out what that means. So all of these titles here are titles of modules. It's a really great course. It's a self-paced course, but it is just a self-paced course without the AI coach. You go through the content, you watch videos, you read articles, and you're really then, without the AI coach, you're kind of left to yourself to then decide to what extent you're going to practice the frameworks that you've been given and the tactics you've been given. But with the AI coach, it actually turns this somewhat passive experience into a totally engaging and active learning journey. So within the course, you can launch, the AI tool is embedded throughout all of that self-paced learning, but you can also launch the AI video assessment tool and you'll see these 4 options. Unfortunately, I can't demo AI roleplay to you today, but this is my favorite tool. You can go in and choose whether you talk to a male or a female, and you can also choose what kind of mood that person is in. So are they obnoxious? Are they a tech bro? Are they neutral? Are they apprehensive? And then you can set the kind of conversation you want to have. So you might say, okay, I want to have a practice conversation talking to an angry parent. The parent's angry because the report has come for their child. It's not what they were expecting, and they're being quite obnoxious. Let's practice that conversation. And I was demoing this to Sean, Alyssa, and the other BTS Spark regional heads a couple of weeks ago. Actually, I might just throw to you, Sean, briefly. To what extent did I handle that conversation with the obnoxious parent?
Extremely professionally, put it that way. So what's really nice about it is you can, as Josh was saying, you can set the scene and then set the tone of the conversation. So no, you did admirably.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you. I feel like I struggled a bit, but I guess that's good to have the human element. I am going to demo another tool for you, which is very similar. It's just not this exact one. But what we will see in just a moment is our co-head of USA BTS Spark, Alyssa Gallagher, demoing the practice mirror, which I won't go into because she's going to go into that for us. There's also a video Q&A, and you can also upload a video to be analyzed as well. What does that analysis mean? We're about to see. So, Alyssa, I'm just going to fast forward to the bit where you demo the tool, and then we'll hear from you when you do the assessment after that demo in the video. I'm just going to fast forward. Yeah.
Now. Hi, my name is Alyssa Gallagher. I co-lead BTS Spark America. And BTS Spark, we're a not-for-profit organization. We focus on growing and developing school leaders. Really everyone from sort of very beginning, emerging, aspiring leaders all the way through the superintendency. And what we do is we specifically focus on developing leadership skills in leaders. We like to focus on what we call the human side of leadership development. And typically we do this, we have a variety of ways, but typically we support leaders through executive coaching, either one-on-one or small group coaching. Now we also provide a lot of webinars, we provide in-person workshops, but really all focused on capacity building and developing skills of leaders. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end my practice and we'll see how I did. Now that was totally off the cuff. I wasn't using any notes, and I can see here that my results are in. So I'm gonna go ahead and click on results. And as it's loading, there's a couple of different ways to analyze your results here. So you can see audience perception, and I can see, first impression, framing, perceived trustworthiness and rapport, authority and impression, and expression and energy. So in any one of these, I can scroll down and get very detailed feedback. You can see here that I didn't have enough hand gestures. So if I wanted to correct this, I could click on it and get some tools and insights. The other thing that I find extremely helpful is I can go right into my transcript analysis, and it actually transcribes everything that I said. It will go ahead and highlight for you either repetitive phrases, sentence starters, filler words. So I can see here, wow, I actually started with and, started another sentence with and I had a lot of uhs. So this is really helpful when you're working to improve your public speaking. Now, another way you can analyze this is I can select a category. So I could select, do I want feedback on conciseness, storytelling, empathy, levity, or persuasiveness? Always kind of interesting. I'm guessing that I'm not the best. Let's click levity here. I'm guessing I'm not the best in adding levity to my speaking, but let's take a look. So you can play around with this, and they're giving me, what went well, but also areas that I need to improve, that if I was looking for that, I didn't have playful language, and some ideas to consider, and perhaps some suggested rewrites. So you can imagine if you were, you are gearing up for an important presentation to your board or your parent community, this is a great place to practice your speech and get immediate private feedback.
So I'd love to hear from you just after watching that. What ideas does that spark for you about AI's role in professional learning? And I guess just to be a bit more specific, as we said before, using AI for professional learning rather than using AI in order to learn it, which is kind of indirectly, I suppose, professional learning. Yeah, what do you think about that kind of use of AI in the professional learning space?
I mean, I think it's interesting because it, to some degree, takes away a human subjectivity, and so you're getting this sort of objective feedback based on some sort of list of criteria that the machine learning has used. And for some people, I suspect that that's a hell of a lot easier, especially if it's negative. And so, or focused on improvements. It's easier to hear that from a thing rather than a person, because you're probably less vulnerable in that process because it happens in private.
Yeah, for sure. So I've just lost audio for a second here, but I can see that you stopped talking. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, cool. Really interesting point, because you're right. It is essentially on rails. It's not deviating at all from what it's been programmed to do, which is quite different from ChatGPT, right? ChatGPT can hallucinate and go in all sorts of different directions. What this particular product is doing is exactly what it's programmed to do and nothing else. And I think that's really interesting, Brad, that you say that it'd be easier to hear that from the machine rather than a human being. I think that's totally right. It's got that as a strength, but the weakness is it's only doing that one thing, whereas a coach can go in all sorts of different directions. It's a dynamic conversation. Yeah, any other thoughts?
One thing that we've come across is situations where the coach or mentor don't have much more expertise or experience than, the individual that they're coaching. And so there's almost this challenge around how do you elevate everyone's competency at the same time? And it feels like they're not getting much of an ROI on the coaching or mentoring, because it's not structured in a way that really is leading to improved outcomes for both the student or the coach or the mentor.
That's really interesting. I'm going to come back to that one, because in the next demo, that is actually addressed. And once we talk about it, I'd love to hear all of your thoughts about that. But yeah, that's really interesting. And also, and Maureen, you might have something to add here. It's interesting what we're talking about when we're talking about expertise, because a lot of our coaches, and just as a reminder, BTS Spark specializes in professional learning for educational leaders. But a lot of our coaches have not been superintendents or school principals or even worked in the education system, but they are experts in leadership development. They are experts in executive coaching. So that's also an interesting concept, whether we're talking about coaching or mentoring, and what level of expertise we're actually looking for. Maureen, you don't have to add anything there, but I'd love to hear from you if you wanted to add something.
No, I would just say, Josh, yeah, that's exactly right. I think we do, though, oftentimes take a look at industry or vertical in a coach's background just because of the business acumen and being able to speak the language.
For sure.
And I just add to on your earlier question, what I was really struck by was the breadth and depth of the conversation bot, and also the opportunity to have choice. For example, diving deeper in different aspects, which I thought was very comprehensive, and being able to have some choice there in how deep you want to go in what aspect.
Yeah, and I should also add at this point that Alyssa, you probably noticed that Alyssa got like high 90s in almost every category. I've tried. I can't get past high 80s, and that's when I'm having a really good time of it. Like my average, I'm hovering mid to high 70s if I'm having a good day. Yeah, so some people are just better at it than others, I suppose. Paul?
One of the things that strikes me about that kind of feedback, it was mentioned earlier that it's more objective feedback, but I'm not sure I fully agree with that. I mean, it's algorithmic feedback based on the training data that the AI bot has been given, but there's a certain subjectivity that certainly can be, I mean, there's bias that can be built into AI, and it is often built into AI, depending on how the reinforcement learning is done. One of the things that I wonder about, I saw giving feedback to her about, the amount that she was moving her hands, for example, and hand gestures. And some of that is culturally influenced, if not determined. And what's appropriate in one cultural context might be different in another cultural context. And I imagine that there's a certain degree of, cultural influence and bias based on the training data and how it's coming up with these scores. And I bring that up just because I think that when getting feedback, there's one of the key, I think, criteria on whether or not or how it is received is the level of trust between the person receiving the feedback and whatever it is that's giving the feedback. And so I think that there's a question of, like, to what extent do people who are involved with this trust the accuracy or the quality of this feedback? And if you're receiving 70 or 80 something percent scores, like, I can imagine some people saying, well, this isn't great feedback, right? It's not telling me, I think I did fine on that, but if people don't have confidence in the validity of the feedback, then it would be difficult to necessarily make the transition to say, this is what I need to work on to grow in that.
Yeah.
These are just some of the initial thoughts.
Totally agree with you. And I think that's why having a human coach involved when these kind of tools are being allocated is so important, especially in this early stage. Like, we might find some cultural competence in AI tools growing, but I totally agree that these tools are made by humans in the first place, and so just as humans have their biases, those biases do find their way into the tools. And it's also you do need to be a little critical of the feedback, as you say, Paul. Like, Alyssa used levity as an example there, but maybe that particular speech, for instance, didn't call for levity, and so therefore we can dismiss levity as a relevant category. But maybe it absolutely needed to be, and therefore that is relevant. So yeah, I think you're right that we do need to look at these things critically from a number of angles. There's a lot more that we could talk about there, but I am going to move on to the next tool because it's really interesting, and it also needs some time to assess. So rather than tell you about the tool and then use the tool, I'm actually going to very quickly show you the framework that it's based on. It's called a firm conversation. Then I'm going to have the conversation with the bot, and then I'm going to tell you about the bot, and then we'll see the assessment because it takes a little bit of time for that assessment to load. So share my screen again. I'm sharing sound. Off we go. So practice bots. Here we go. This is the framework I'm going to use for this particular practice bot, because this practice bot is programmed to have this conversation. It's not a human coach. It can't have a dynamic conversation. As Bradley was saying before, it's very regimented. Just as that feedback was regimented, this bot is regimented. And it also is going to give me feedback. It's going to assess my ability to have a firm conversation based on the 5 parts of a firm conversation. So I'll give you a brief on the kind of conversation I'm going to be having in a moment, because we'll see it on our screen. But the things that I need to touch on in this conversation are, I need to set an agenda. So what's the intention and purpose for this conversation? Facts, I need to speak to specific fact-based situations and data and stay away from generalizations. I'm going to describe the impact of the behavior or action. I'm going to make a clear request or suggestion. And then we're going to come to an agreement on a plan moving forward. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a terrible job of this. So we can get the assessment to give us, unlike what Alyssa got, which was a glowing feedback, we're going to see if it can give me some pretty clear feedback on where I need to improve on this conversation. Stop my share again because I need to jump into a browser. And here it is. Okay. This is my practice session. It'll give me a brief on the conversation. It'll then ask me for my name. I'll type my name in, we'll press begin, and then we'll be launching into talking to the bot, whose name is Emma. So I'm speaking to Emma, a team member who's recently missed important deadlines. These lapses negatively impacted a client presentation, but Emma doesn't appear to fully understand the seriousness of her actions. I'm Emma's manager. I've been asked to address her recent performance issues, not through a typical performance review, but applying a firm feedback approach. Agenda, facts, impact, request, mutuality, just like we saw. My challenge is to stay focused on facts and outcomes, guide Emma past her initial defensiveness, and work towards an actionable improvement plan. So this is the guide for my conversation. I'm ready to start. Josh Valeri is my name. And I will start my voice practice. Hi, Emma. Thank you very much for joining me today. Emma, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you know why we're having this meeting?
Oh, hi. Sure, happy to be here. Well, I'm guessing it's about a general performance review. You know, just to check in on how things are going overall.
Actually, I wanted to talk specifically about the missed deadline for that client presentation. So today I want to talk about what happened with the missed deadline, any rationale or reason that you might have for that deadline being missed. I want to cover what the consequences were of that missed deadline. And then I'd like to talk to you about what we can do together in terms of next steps going forward. Does that sound okay?
All right, I hear you. I mean, from my side, I was juggling a lot of priorities that week. And honestly, I didn't think the deadline was set in stone. But sure, let's walk through it step by step and figure out what to improve.
Yeah, well, I guess the first thing would be to talk about the deadline. So we had all agreed on a Thursday close of business deadline for that presentation to be ready. And it wasn't ready. As a result of that, there were other staff members that had to step in and finalize that. But I guess the main thing I wanted to focus on was that we had agreed on that deadline, and I didn't hear from you about that, any risk to that deadline.
Wait, I remember it differently. I thought we were still finalizing the timeline. I mean, I had a lot on my plate, and it wasn't clear to me that Thursday was absolutely locked in. Are you sure it was completely confirmed?
Yeah, it was confirmed in both meetings and in written documentation, and I'll just alert you to the emails that had that deadline documented therein. Now, the impact of that missed deadline was that some of your colleagues had to work after hours in order to get that presentation ready for the next morning. They weren't particularly thrilled about that, but they were happy to do it in the end. Were you aware of that?
Look, I wasn't fully aware that others had to pick up the slack after hours. I honestly thought I could catch up early the next morning. I see now there was an impact. I guess I underestimated how locked in that timeline was.
Yeah, well, look, one thing I'd love to do today is agree that if there are deadlines that are set, that we will meet those deadlines in future, or if we can't meet them, try your best to let me or a colleague know as soon as possible when you know that that deadline is at risk, and then we can do something about it. Does that sound like a good plan?
All right, I get it. Yeah, that sounds like a reasonable plan. I'll make sure to communicate sooner if something's off track.
Appreciate your time, Emma. Thanks for coming to an agreement on that with me, and I'll speak to you soon.
All right. Thanks for your time too. Talk soon.
All right, so I'm going to end that conversation, and in the background, this platform is going to develop an assessment that I can then walk through, including a transcript. So that's now happening. Yep. So while that's happening, I'm going to stop my share and go back to our framework. So you remember we've had thousands of conversation between coach and coachee. We've taken data from those conversations. We've distilled that into frameworks like this one. And this is an example of some of what we do in workshops, in coaching, and in learning journeys as well. And as you can now see in AI-enabled learning. So what did I get right here? What did I cover? Actually, what did I miss? Did I miss anything? I might have accidentally hit all of these. I wasn't supposed to do that, but we'll see. We'll see what the AI said.
I think the from my side, probably the fact side was a little bit weaker than it could have been, because you know, that you know, this is the clear deadline we set, that we agreed it was in this email, this is where it was, you knew about it, you were aware of it, that sort of thing probably was a little bit softer than it could have been, because you know.
Yeah, I could have locked that in a little bit more and been a lot more definitive about that for sure. Yeah, the impact was also maybe a little light on. I think the request was probably pretty straightforward, and also the agreement was a little light on as well. What I've tried to do here is a kind of loose version of this Affirm framework. But I guess the main point is that we do professional learning all the time, especially with leadership development. We see these frameworks, and then what? We kind of just forget about them. So I guess the point is that we get to practice here all sorts of different conversations. So we can, this note down here is the main point. We can customize these bots for any conversation. And we're waiting for the right opportunities to work with partners on getting a little more specific. So we've done a lot of these, so difficult conversations, feedback conversations, teacher coaching, setting development goals. What I would love is getting more into parent interactions. And if we've got time at the end, I'd love to hear some of your ideas about what we could do in terms of developing a bot. But we can also, so we can develop scenarios, personalities, and we can also, and this is getting to your point before, Juan, of developing customizable scorecards. So that's what we're about to look at. But then what's interesting about that is that we can track the improvement of those scores. And I guess I should stress that these scores, as Paul was saying earlier, the scores are not totally objective. They are based on human biases, but we do our very best to make them as objective as possible. We can track these scores over time across multiple people. So for instance, you're the head of an HR department, or you're the head of a department within a school. You've done a leadership development program. These conversations that are part of that program are bots that are now in the hands of those school staff, and they can practice them over time. And we can track, or rather, whoever is in charge at the school of that program can track how those scores for those conversations are actually improving or not over time. And I feel like that's something that hasn't really existed in a systemic way before. So I'm really interested in what that can do, for the professional learning space. Paul, you've got your hand up.
Just a question, Josh. Is it possible on the platform to also upload an actual conversation and get feedback on that, or is it only feedback on conversations with bots?
Yeah, interesting question. On this platform that we just used, you can't upload a video. You can't do that. But on the Speak Like a Leader course, I'm just going to jump back to here. In the Speak Like a Leader course, in this practice lab, you can analyze a video. So if you've already got a video, or you already have, and this is actually happening in an Australian context, you already have a video recording as part of an existing professional learning program that may be submitted to, human coaches to do the assessment. What we're actually doing in one of these programs is using that analyzer video tool to give the participants a practice submission, if you will, before they submit their difficult conversation recording. They can submit a trial run, if you will.
Does that analyze a video? Is it for a conversation, or is it just for one person sort of giving a presentation?
No, it's just for one person giving a presentation. So yeah, that's an interesting distinction, but I'm sure we will have something like that really soon, because that is exactly the kind of work that we're interested in doing, and we've got a lot of other initiatives that we're soon to be releasing. That's not one of them, but it's a brilliant idea, Paul, and I'll make sure that that makes it back to the digital team here at BCS. Lamore, you've got a question.
Yeah, I'm just wondering the extent to which you've kind of looked at this with regard to the EU AI Act, because particularly in a German context, if you're using something like this to judge performance, that's problematic. Oh, great.
Yes, yeah, it is something we take really seriously. In fact, the Verity team, so I'll just quickly tell you how we came upon this technology, because it's really difficult to develop these kinds of things in-house. So what BTS has done, and why I love working for BTS Spark, is that we're part of this bigger BTS entity, that BTS actually bought a company called Verity, who developed these bots. And now they're a team within BTS, and they're based out of Spain. So being within the EU, they do need to be compliant, GDPR compliant. And we also make sure that these recordings do not train LLMs, which is something that someone asked me recently, can't you just use ChatGPT for all this stuff? And the answer is, of course you can. But if you're using a personal ChatGPT account, all of that data is going to go back into training the large language model. And it's also not on rails the way this is as well. I hope that makes sense. When I say on rails, I mean that conversation I just had was programmed to do that one thing. And actually, I'll take this opportunity to show you the results. So just got to move your faces to the other side of the screen. Oh, okay, well, that was a bit better than I had expected. So I've got a good here, 80%. So here's my transcript. But what's really interesting is that when you go into so for instance, to avoid triggering defensiveness, did I state the agenda without blame, judgment, or disrespect? Yes, I did. That's well and good to say yes, you did, but I can actually click go to example, and I can see exactly what I said to do that rather than, and even here, so for instance, in this one, no, but there's no example, I suppose, because I didn't do it. But here, did you avoid generalizations of subjective opinions? No, I did not. Here's the example. So it's an interesting way of using the frameworks that we've already developed over time, programming the bot to have that particular conversation, and then using that framework as a way of assessing you as well. Now, Paul, I can see you've got your hand up, but I just want to make this point as well, that was just one conversation that I had at one point in time. I think systemically, the power of this kind of tech is that you can, after a workshop where 25 people have learned the same thing, they can all practice that over time, and someone within the school or system can progress, can see the progress of that feedback over time. I think that's something really powerful, and make sure that, you know, quality professional learning that might happen in a workshop and in a kind of punctuated event becomes something that is more of an ongoing practice, which I'm really excited about. Paul?
I just wanted to add on to what Lamar was saying about the EU AI Act. I don't think, and tell me if I'm wrong, Lamar, I don't think that it was specifically about the idea of it being used in training data like you were mentioning and the GDPR compliance, but rather, I just looked it up. I think that what you were describing, the idea of using that for job performance, falls into what the AI Act calls a high risk use case, which it describes as any sort of tool used for recruitment, job application analysis, performance evaluation, or decisions affecting terms of work relationships. So if it were being used to evaluate performance, that would sort of fall into a very high risk category, because a lot of these systems, at least historically, and I don't know about BTS Spark, but there are things that the reliability isn't as strong as people would like, and there's a lot of worry about what happens if those biases affect the score, and that has real world implications. Is that what you were referring to, Lamar, or did I miss that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then
Okay.
there's the added layer of like the Betriebsrat, the kind of internal system in the school that would have to have some kind of working agreement around how the data is used. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, I think that there's a difference between performance management and professional learning, and I totally agree with you that this kind of technology shouldn't be used for performance management whatsoever. But as a tool to learn how to use these in the workplace in a constructive way, I think there definitely is a place for that. But I absolutely agree, and I think it's something we should articulate a little more clearly. What's really exciting, I think, about working with AI tools is things change every single day. And so here's another example of something that we should think about articulating, and we definitely will, because I think it won't take long as a team for us to get to a point where we have a pretty strong opinion about that, which is, for professional learning, fantastic. For performance management, no way.
Got to run. Sorry, thank you.
That's all right. Thanks very much. And thank you all for joining. We have gone a couple of minutes over time. I apologize for that. And for everyone watching on the recording, thanks so much for sticking with us. And yeah, looking forward to seeing you in the next webinar. Thanks, everybody.